Coronavirus 23rd of January to 14th of February. Wuhan, the city where the virus originated, is the largest city in central China, with a population of over 11 million people. The city, on January 23, shut down transport links. Following Wuhan lockdown, the city of Huanggang was also placed in quarantine, and the city of Azhou closed its train stations. This means that 18 million people have been placed in isolation. On January 30, CDC confirmed the first U.S. case of human-to-human transmission. On January 30, the novel coronavirus total case count surpassed that for SARS, which affected 8,096 people worldwide. On January 30, the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus outbreak a global public health emergency. On January 31, the United States declared coronavirus a public health emergency. On January 31, the first two novel coronavirus cases in the UK, the first two cases in Russia, and the first case in Sweden and in Spain were reported. Canada reported its fourth case. On February 1, the eighth case in the United States was reported. On February 2, a death in the Philippines marked the first death occurring outside of China. A 44-year-old Chinese man from Wuhan. On February 3, two new cases were reported in Germany. One is the children of a family already infected with the virus. A 39-year-old man died from the coronavirus in Hong Kong. Traveled to Wuhan on January 21. 6 new cases in Thailand. One new case in Taiwan is a returning evacuee. 2 new cases in Japan, one in Australia, the third in Queensland, an 8-year-old child from Wuhan. First case of coronavirus confirmed in Belgium, one of the 9 repatriated from Wuhan on February 2. Japan has confirmed at least 10 cases of coronavirus from a cruise ship in the port of Yokohama near Tokyo. A 80-year-old Hong Kong man on the ship, who tested positive for the virus, infected a number of other people. One new case in Canada, a woman in her 50s who had been hosting relatives from the Wuhan area. 4-year-old in Malaysia is the first case in the country to have recovered after being infected by the coronavirus. China's National Health Commission (NHC) says that about 80% of those who died were over the age of 60. 75% had pre-existing conditions such as cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. As they confirm 6 new cases in Singapore, 4 of which did not travel to China. Health official announced first local coronavirus transmissions. 2 new cases, both in their 60s, in Hong Kong. Health officials said it was suspected the virus had been transmitted locally. 10 additional cases confirmed on board the cruise ship in Japan. One Japanese man in his 20s who deals with tourists is the 35th case in Japan. 3 new coronavirus cases in South Korea. 2 men had traveled to Singapore for conference. 4 new cases confirmed in Singapore, including a 6-month-old child of an infected couple. 1 death reported from Tianjin, China. The patient had developed fever and cough after shopping in a department store on January 22. The patient had a history of type 2 diabetes and hypertension. 1 new case in the United States, Wisconsin. 2 new cases in Malaysia, 1 new case in Australia, Queensland. 2 new cases in Canada, British Columbia, a man and a woman in their 30s. 1 new case in Italy, a 29-year-old Italian national, repatriated from Wuhan with other 55 Italians. First case of coronavirus in an Italian national, the other 2 were Chinese tourists visiting Italy. Death of Dr. Li, the Chinese doctor. 1 new case in England, a British national. 1 new case in Germany, in Bavaria, bringing the total there to 11, the wife of an employee of the company from the district of Starnberg. 2 of the couple's children also tested positive for the coronavirus. 1 new case in Australia, a 37-year-old Chinese woman part of the tourist group that was placed in quarantine. This is the 5th case in Queensland. 4 other cases have been confirmed in Victoria, 4 in NSW and 2 in South Australia to date. 41 new cases in Japan on the cruise ship. With 813 total deaths as of February 8, 2020, the novel coronavirus has surpassed SARS, final toll of 774 deaths in 2003. 7 new cases in Singapore. 3 new cases in Japan on cruise ship, bringing the total on the Diamond Princess to 64. 5 new cases in France, 4 adults and a child. The U.S. Embassy in Beijing confirmed the death of a 60-year-old American woman in Wuhan on February 6. With 906 deaths, the novel coronavirus, 2019 ANCOV, has surpassed MERS, final toll of 858 deaths in 2012. 3 new cases in Singapore. Out of 43 cases, 6 critical in ICU, 6 discharged. 1 new case in the UK. First in London. 1 new case in Spain. UK risks a major coronavirus outbreak, warns world expert who co-discovered Ebola. The potential for spread is much, much higher than Ebola. 4 new cases in the UK. 2 new cases in Singapore, including a 2-year-old Singapore citizen who was evacuated from Wuhan. Update on 45 patients, 7 discharged, 7 in critical condition in ICU. 3 new cases in Hong Kong. 1 new case in Malaysia. 65 new cases in Japan on the Diamond Princess cruise ship. 39 new cases in Japan aboard the cruise ship. 2 new cases in Germany, Starnberg district west of Munich. COVID-19 is the name officially given to the novel coronavirus, 2019 nCoV. 2 new cases in Singapore, 7 new cases in Hong Kong and 1 in Thailand. 2 new cases in Japan, 2 men who had returned from Wuhan. A building's piping system is being investigated as a potential cause of airborne transmission, via feces in Hong Kong after the 42nd case, who lives 10 stories below the 12th confirmed case, was confirmed on February 10. Some of the vents might not have been properly blocked, allowing the virus to be transported to other flats. Still unsure about the exact route of transmission. It could be the usual droplet transmission, but there is the environmental factor. Authorities have evacuated the building. 1 new case in the United States, San Diego, California. 1 new case in South Korea. Report from Hubei, Chinese province, for February 12, 14,840 new cases and 242 new deaths. 1 new case in the UK, a Chinese national. First case in London. 1 new case in Hong Kong and 1 recovered. 3 new cases in Singapore. 3 new cases in Hong Kong. Include a mother and her 37-year-old son, who had dinner with 3 earlier cases at a restaurant, in North Point on January 26. 1 new case in the United States, in Texas. 8 new cases in Singapore. 1 new case in Malaysia. Daughter of 16th case and a friend to the 14th case, all arrived from Wuhan on January 25. First death in Japan, a woman in her 80s. 2 new cases in Japan. A taxi driver in Tokyo, a surgeon at a hospital in Uwasacho, who, after developing fever, continued to work as usual, including visiting patients, for 3 days. 44 new cases in Japan on the cruise ship, bringing the total on the Diamond Princess to 218. 1 new case in the United States, 8th in California. Report from Hubei Province, China, for February 14, 2,420 new cases, including 1,138 clinically diagnosed, 139 new deaths, including 34 clinically diagnosed, 912 new hospital discharges. 1 new case in Canada, British Columbia. First case in Egypt, and first in Africa, a foreigner who had been put into isolation in a hospital. 4 new cases in Japan, a Japanese man in his 50s living in Hokkaido, and with no history of traveling abroad. A man in his 60s, who initially had a cold on February 3, followed by a fever of 39 degrees Celsius, on February 8, and then pneumonia on February 10. He had traveled to Hawaii from January 28 to February 7. A person from the January 31 charter flight, 3rd in a series, from Wuhan. A 30-year-old man working in the local government, who had transported patients from the cruise ship. 9 new case in Singapore, 6 linked to Grace Assembly Church. 17 people have now fully recovered from the disease. 2 new cases in Japan. Both are connected to the previously confirmed case of a taxi driver. 3 new cases in Hong Kong. 1 case had attended a family gathering of 29 at a restaurant in North Point on January 26, which resulted in a total of 8 cases so far, with at least 2 additional people pending test results. 2 new cases in Japan. The National Health Commission of China, in its February 14 official report, deducted 108 previously reported deaths, and 1,043 previously reported cases, from the total in Hubei Province, due to repeated statistics. Report from Hubei Province, for February 13. 4,823 new cases, including 3,095 clinically diagnosed. 116 new deaths, including 8 clinically diagnosed. 51,986 cumulative total cases, including 15,384 clinically diagnosed, 690 new hospital discharges,